Mr. Chairman, you correctly cited the role of Elon Musk. It's a puzzling role for many people, certainly on this side of the aisle, and I think for some on yours. Who is this unelected billionaire that he can attempt to dismantle federal agencies, fire people, transfer them, offer them early retirement, and have sweeping changes to agencies without any congressional review, oversight, or concurrence? Therefore, Mr. Chairman, given his prominence and his importance, I move that the committee subpoena Elon Musk to come before it as a witness at the earliest possible moment. And I so move.
There's been a motion and second. The motion is not debatable.
Mr. Chairman, why is it not debatable? Point of order.
It is debatable.
Mr. Chair, I strike the last word.
Hold on.
Mr. Chairman.
Can I table the motion? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, why don't we want to debate Elon Musk coming in and talking to us about his work and how he's enriched himself for $64 billion?
There's
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes Dr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to table the motion.
There's
I
a
second.
motion to table. Is there a
Mr.
second?
Chairman,
Second by
point of
Mr.
order.
Higgins.
Point of order.
Now,
Mr.
the
Chairman.
motion is not debatable, as many
Point of order, Mr.
are in
Chairman.
favor of tabling. Point of order. State your point.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's outrageous that this committee will not even entertain a
No,
motion.
you state your.
Chairman, that's not a point of order.
Somebody
You know,
who's breaking the law
agree. Point
and
of order.
dismantling our federal
Mr.
agencies
Chairman,
I
and
call
hiring
for
federal
Point of order.
employees
No,
and
we don't listen to
hacking
demagogues.
data,
Out of
and
order.
you will not
Out of order.
even
Out of order.
entertain a motion
The
to
motion
bring
is
this
out
to
of
the
order.
president of
demagoguery.
the
This is
Oversight
out of order.
Committee.
As are in favor of tabling.
Yes,
signify.
let's have order in this
Yes.
country.
Stansbury, you're out of order. You know you're out of order. You know the rules of this committee. There's been a motion
Mr.
and a
Elon
second to
Musk is
table.
out of
No.
order and dismantling.
He's out of order.
God.
I call the question.
There's been a motion and second. Motion by Dr. Fox, second by Mr. Higgins to table. All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the motion
Mr.
is
Chairman,
tabled.
I ask for a recorded
A
vote.
recorded vote is ordered. We will set up for the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, speaking of efficiency of our time, since we're just sitting here, I would love to hear from someone why we don't want to have Mr. Musk come testify before.
Gentleman's not recognized. This is a committee hearing about eliminating wage fraud and abuse. You've pulled a parliamentary move, which you have the right to do. This wasn't expected. It wasn't in the agenda. We're trying to print everything and get it ready to have the roll call vote.
Well, speaking of abuse, we have someone who
Mr.
is
Chairman,
shutting
he's out of
down
order.
federal
You're out of
programs
order. You're out of order.
benefiting billions of
Chairman,
dollars.
he's out of order. This is just
Mr.
democracy.
Chairman.
Demagoguery again.
Can you control the other side? They're out of control.
I'm trying.
Hashtag irony.
Ms. Brown votes no. Ms. Stansbury.
I vote no to a motion that would table a subpoena for Elon Musk.
More demagoguery.
It's out of order to discuss what the motion is? Okay, guys.
It's out of order. All right, order. All right, let's go. Keep
Ms. Stansbury votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Kassar.
No on the motion to table our motion to have Elon Musk at this committee.
Mr. Kassar votes no. Ms. Crockett.
No on giving the American people the transparency that they deserve by bringing this
Demagoguery
oligarch
again.
before
More of
us.
this. Nope.
Ms. Crockett votes no.
Will the clerk please tally the report, the roll call?
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 20, the nays are 19.
The ayes have it, and the motion fails. And I might add, Mr. Ranking Member, you all could have invited Mr. Musk to be your minority witness, but you all chose to have a college professor, which is what you normally choose to have as a witness at any hearing, and that's fine. But you all had an opportunity to invite Elon Musk, and you chose not to. So,
Mr. Chairman, could I just
Yes.
respond? Thank you. You make a point, but from our point of view, given the prominence Mr. Musk has been given by President Trump in this administration, sweeping unprecedented powers, from our point of view, he is not a minority witness. He ought to be a full committee witness because of the prominence and the role he's playing, and subject to the oversight and scrutiny of this committee. Thank you.
I want to welcome everyone here today. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I now recognize myself for the purpose of delivering an opening statement. This morning, we'll explore how we can make the federal government work better for all Americans. President Trump promised he would eliminate Washington waste and reform the unchecked federal bureaucracy, and he is delivering on his promise made to the American people. President Trump created the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to conduct a government-wide audit to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, and ensure we protect taxpayer dollars. At the helm of President Trump's effort is Elon Musk, one of the most successful entrepreneurs ever. For decades and on a bipartisan basis, members of this committee have lamented the inefficiency of the federal bureaucracy. We fought never-ending battles against the waste, fraud, and abuse the bureaucracy generates during both Republican and Democrat administrations. One byproduct of this inefficiency, according to GAO, is the near $250 billion in annual improper payments the government issues. But now that President Trump is taking action to drain the swamp and expose how the federal government is spending taxpayer money, which he was elected to do, Democrats are hyperventilating and sensationalizing it. Over the past few days, we've heard wild claims from Democrats that we are, quote, at the beginning of a dictatorship, end quote, and we are in a constitutional crisis. This kind of theatrical rhetoric is exactly what the American people rejected in November. Americans know that Washington needs reform, and DOGE is taking inventory to bring about change and steward taxpayer dollars entrusted to the federal government. Real innovation is not clean and tidy. It's necessarily disruptive and messy. But that's exactly what Washington needs right now. And it's what the American people voted for in November, a departure from the broken status quo. This committee intends to work in partnership with DOGE. We want to reinforce its efforts and not blunt the momentum it's generating for needed change to the federal bureaucracy. At the Oversight Committee, our core mission remains unchanged, identifying waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government, and proposing solutions to make it more efficient and effective for the American people. For this Congress, we created a subcommittee chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene that is dedicated to working with DOGE. But I expect all of our subcommittees will participating in this effort to make Washington more accountable. I'm hopeful that we can find some common ground with our Democrat colleagues to ensure the federal government more efficiently and effectively serves the American people. I ask all my colleagues here today, who among us believes that the federal government operates at peak efficiency? The federal government has expanded dramatically since the early years of our republic. There are today more than 400 executive branch agencies and sub-agencies, and roughly 1,000 federal commissions. Most of these entities are relatively new creations. They did not exist for most of our nation's history. Not only has the government grown in size and complexity, but it has also taken on many functions once handled by the states or even the private sector. How did we get here? Tom Schatz, the president of the Citizens Against Government Waste, and one of our witnesses today, notes that Congress tends to respond to each new problem that arises by creating a new program or agency. And even if the problem goes away, the program or agency remains. Congressional authorizing committees tend to generate these new programs and entities all too often without sufficient regard to similar federal activities occurring outside of their jurisdiction. Over time, the expansion of entities and programs has yielded an increasingly complex bureaucracy with a massive amount of overlap and duplication. For instance, The Government Accountability Office, the GAO, recently found 43 job training programs scattered across 9 different federal agencies. That's just one of dozens of areas of wasteful duplication the GAO has identified across a range of federal activities. I hope we can learn today from Governor Kim Reynolds, who proposed her own wide-ranging reorganization in Iowa, which the state legislature enacted. For example, she will detail how Iowa consolidated a host of state-level job training programs. Iowa's reorganization also eliminated or consolidated a slew of state agencies, commissions, and vacant job positions. Iowa's example shows that the chief executive of any unit of government, federal, state, or local, is well positioned to propose ways to streamline that government. After all, they're the ones who run it on a day-to-day basis. At the federal level, the president has considerable authority within existing law to reorganize certain government offices and functions. That's the case, for instance, with respect to USAID. But some reorganizations do require changes in law. Throughout our nation's history, such reorganization legislation typically originated from the White House. That's in part because for much of the 20th century, presidential reorganization proposals requiring changes in law were granted special consideration by Congress. I think renewing that special authority, requiring Congress to take an up or down vote on reorganizations proposed by the president, would help facilitate needed improvements in government operations. In the meantime, I look forward to learning more about keys to successful reforms from our witnesses during today's hearing. I now yield to Ranking Member Conley for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our government was designed to be by, of, and for the American people. It's made up of civil servants who take an oath to serve the American people and to support and defend the Constitution. More than 1 in 3 federal workers is employed by either the Postal Service, ensuring every American can get mail, or the Department of Veterans Affairs, providing care to our veterans in VA hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes. Almost 1 in 3 federal workers is a veteran, and more than 85% live outside the D.C. metropolitan area across every state and serving every community in America. 1 in 3 Americans and half of all American children are enrolled in a government program. Our government provides the support these Americans are counting on, including Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, Head Start, the National School Lunch Program. We depend on our government to safeguard our food supply and to ensure life-saving medication is safe to consume. We depend on our government to provide alerts about extreme weather through the National Weather Service, which you know all too well from the tornado that devastated your community, Mr. Chairman, a few years ago, and to provide disaster relief to communities where it's needed, such as in Los Angeles and the devastating fires of the last few weeks. This is the so-called deep state that President Trump and his acolytes continue to demonize, and these are the programs and services sitting on Elon Musk's chopping block right now. Their efforts to, quote, right-size government serve no one but themselves and fellow oligarchs who want to destroy, deregulate, and privatize, leaving everyday Americans to foot the bill with not only their paychecks, but even potentially their well-being and their lives. Just last week, the country watched in horror as a commercial aircraft and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided over the Potomac River, killing 67 people, including several of my constituents, including young children. We know that disasters are more likely to happen when the agencies that ensure our safety are unsupported and under-resourced. Our nation's air traffic control facilities were already operating below recommended staffing levels. But one day before the horrific crash, the Trump administration sent an email to more than 2 million federal employees offering them a purported financial incentive to immediately quit their jobs. Can you imagine what might yet happen if our air traffic controllers accept this offer to quit en masse? This is just the tip of the iceberg. In its first 2 weeks, the Trump administration has ordered a hiring freeze on all federal civilian positions, ordered all federal employees back to the office full time, unless, of course, you take their early retirement offer, and then you don't have to come to work for 8 months. Paved the way to purge more than 100,000 nonpartisan career civil servants and replace them with political loyalists, and wage war on our nation's commitment to civil rights by eviscerating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The new administration also ordered the politicization of the senior executive service, forced employees to surveil and report on colleagues, and fired the Democratic commissioners of the National Labor Relations Board and the Equal Opportunity Commission. They administered loyalty tests to career civil servants at the National Security Council, granted security clearances to incoming White House officials without vetting, reportedly violated cybersecurity procurement and privacy laws by recklessly handing federal systems and data, and attempted a late-night purge of 17 nonpartisan inspectors general, a brazenly illegal act that will only provide cover for the corruption that inevitably will ensue. The Trump administration also ordered a freeze of federal grants, loans, and other financial assistance programs immediately after the funding freeze was issued. Medicaid and Head Start reported disruptions, and some of FEMA's online portals were cut off. Although the freeze was halted by a judge and then rescinded by the administration, we saw in only 48 hours how willing this administration is to threaten the health, safety, and security of Americans in service of its unlawful and partisan agenda. If these initiatives sound familiar, it's because so many of them are ripped right out of the Project 2025 playbook. Remember that deeply unpopular tone that President Trump, as candidate Trump, desperately tried to distance himself from during the campaign. Many of these executive orders mirror Project 2025 proposals, and at least 4 prominent 2025 authors now have top positions in the administration. Trump's disavowal of Project 2025 was just part of the con. President Trump and Elon Musk are using a wrecking ball to systematically dismember the government piece by piece. The American people deserve better, and we in Congress have a constitutional duty to uphold the laws that we created. We must protect the government, workers, programs, and services that the future of this country depends on, and stop an unconstitutional assault on the government.